Rain hammers against my office window, like it's trying to break through. It's past midnight, and the city below is drowning in November darkness. I should be home, should be sleeping, but sleep doesn't come easy. Not when you've spent 30 years staring into the void of unsolved cases. Tonight, I'm looking at Scarlett Miller's file again. The folder sits on my desk, worn at the edges, stained with coffee rings from 100 sleepless nights just like this one. I pour myself another whiskey. The amber liquid catches the dim light from my desk lamp, the only brightness in this tomb of forgotten souls. My hands aren't as steady as they used to be. The weight of this case, it never leaves you. Scarlett Miller, 23 years old, a model on the rise. Auburn hair that caught sunlight like fire. Green eyes that could sell anything from perfume to dreams. She had that kind of beauty that made photographers fight over her. Magazine covers, fashion shows. A future so bright, it should have blinded everyone. Then she met Blake Sterling. I flip open the file, and there he is. His publicity photo stares back at me with that $1 million smile. Golden boy, a professional athlete. The kind of athlete who signs autographs and makes charity appearances. Endorsement deals worth millions. The cameras loved him almost as much as they loved her. America's perfect couple. The headlines called them perfect. That word tastes like poison now. It was March 2019 when Scarlett vanished. Not disappeared. Mind you, vanished. There's a difference. People disappear all the time, leave notes, run away, start over. But to vanish, that takes something else, that takes intention. From someone who doesn't want you found. The last person to see her alive was Blake Sterling. He reported her missing 3 days later. 3 days. Let that sink in for a moment. Your girlfriend doesn't come home, and you wait 72 hours to tell anyone. His explanation was smooth, practiced. He thought she'd gone to visit her sister in Portland. Thought she needed space. Thought. I've learned something in my years doing this work. When someone starts a story with what they thought, instead of what they knew, they're building distance. Distance from the truth. Distance from guilt. Distance from a body they don't want you to find. The coffee on my desk has gone cold hours ago. But I drink it anyway. The bitterness feels appropriate. Outside, a siren wails through the rain-soaked streets. Another crime, another victim, another file that'll end up on someone's desk at midnight, years from now. When the trail has gone ice cold, and the witnesses have scattered like autumn leaves. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning. Back to when Scarlett Miller was still, unless a missing person, and Blake Sterling was still a hero. The initial investigation moved like molasses. Blake Sterling had money, fame, and an army of lawyers who materialized faster than you could say person of interest. I wasn't the lead detective back then. Just another badge watching from the sidelines. Taking notes, seeing the cracks form in the golden facade. Sterling's story was simple. He claimed Scarlett left their penthouse apartment around 8 p.m. on March 15th. Said she mentioned meeting a friend for drinks. Didn't say which friend, didn't say which bar. When pressed, he couldn't remember if she took her purse, couldn't remember what she was wearing. For a man who supposedly loved this woman, his memory had more holes than a gunshot victim. I light a cigarette. The smoke curls toward the water-stained ceiling, disappearing into shadows. My doctor told me to quit. That was 5 years ago. Some habits are harder to break than others. Some truths are harder to swallow. Scarlett's phone pinged off a tower near their apartment that night. Then nothing. Digital silence. In this age, that's the modern equivalent of a scream cut short. Her social media went dark, her bank accounts untouched. Her agent received no calls. It was as if she'd been erased from existence with the thoroughness of a professional. But Blake Sterling wasn't a professional at this. He was an athlete with a god complex and a temper that his publicists worked overtime to bury. The interviews with friends painted a different picture than the glossy magazine spreads. Scarlett's roommate from modeling school, Jennifer Walsh, told investigators about the bruises. Small ones at first, on the arms, explained away as clumsiness. Then larger, darker, the kind that makeup couldn't quite hide during photo shoots. Sterling's teammates knew something too. They'd seen the mood swings, the rage after a lost game, the way he'd throw equipment, scream at coaches, punch lockers until his knuckles bled, but nobody talked. Not officially. Team loyalty, career protection. The code of silence that lets monsters hide in plain sight. I pull out a photograph from the file. Scarlett at a charity gala, 6 weeks before she vanished. She's wearing a red dress, smiling for the camera, Sterling's arm around her waist. But if you look close, really close, you can see it. The smile doesn't reach her eyes. There's something hollow there, something afraid. That's when Marvin Davis enters the story. Davis was Sterling's childhood friend. His fixer, the guy who made problems disappear. Got caught with substances. Davis knew a guy. Bad press brewing. Davis handled it. He was the shadow behind the spotlight. And he was loyal to Sterling the way a dog is loyal to the hand that feeds it. Phone records showed Davis called Sterling 17 times the night Scarlett vanished. 17 calls between 8 p.m. and midnight. That's not casual conversation. That's coordination. That's panic. That's two men trying to align their stories before the walls close in. The break came from an unexpected place, a gas station attendant in rural Connecticut, 200 miles from the city. He remembered Marvin Davis because Davis paid cash for a full tank at 3 a.m., acted nervous, and had mud caked on his designer sneakers. Mud in March, the attendant was a hunter. He knew that kind of mud, forest mud, the kind you get from digging. Security footage confirmed it. Davis's Range Rover, heading north on the 15th, returning south on the 16th. The vehicle sat lower on the return trip, heavier, like it was carrying weight it hadn't been carrying before. I stub out my cigarette and immediately light another. The rain hasn't let up. If anything, it's gotten worse. There's something poetic about that. The sky weeping for a girl whose own tears stopped falling 6 years ago. When detectives brought Davis in for questioning, he crumbled faster than wet newspaper. Not immediately. First came the denials, the lawyer consultations, the rehearsed answers. But surveillance wears people down. We had his phone records, we had the gas station footage, we had soil samples from his vehicle that matched forest composition in 3 specific counties. What we didn't have was Scarlett Miller's body. Davis gave us everything except that. He admitted Sterling called him that night, frantic, screaming that something had gone wrong. An argument that escalated, hands around a throat. The terrible moment when struggling stops and silence begins. Davis admitted he helped move her, wrapped in blankets and plastic, loaded into his vehicle while the city slept, but where they took her, that secret went to the grave, or might as well have. Davis claimed he didn't remember the exact location, said it was dark, he was panicking, nothing looked familiar in daylight when we drove him through those forests. Maybe that was true. Maybe it was one last act of loyalty to his friend. Maybe some truths are buried so deep. Even the people who buried them can't find their way back. Sterling never confessed, not once. His lawyers built walls of reasonable doubt brick by expensive brick, but the prosecution had enough. Davis's testimony, the phone records, security footage showing Sterling purchasing bleach, plastic sheeting, and duct tape to days after Scarlett vanished. The luminol tests in his penthouse that lit up like a Christmas tree, revealing blood spatter, he'd scrub it away, but couldn't erase. The jury deliberated for 6 days. I sat in that courtroom every single one of them, watching Sterling's mask finally crack. The golden smile faded, the confident posture slumped. By the end, he looked like what he really was. A killer wearing a hero's image. Guilty. First-degree murder. Life without parole. Marvin Davis got 20 years for accessory after the fact and obstruction. He'll be eligible for parole in 2031. I'll probably be dead by then. Might be a mercy. Justice was served, that's what the headlines said. That's what the district attorney announced on the courthouse steps, while cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. Blake Sterling would spend the rest of his life in a cell. Marvin Davis would spend the next decade behind bars. The case was closed, but closed isn't the same as solved. I close the file and lean back in my chair. The leather creaks. Everything in this office creaks, including me. The rain continues its percussion against the window, steady as a heartbeat. Scarlett Miller's heartbeat stopped 6 years ago in that penthouse apartment, and we put away the man who stopped it. We did our job. So, why does it feel like we failed? Because somewhere out there, in some unmarked grave beneath Connecticut soil, Scarlett Miller still waits to come home. Her mother still waits for closure that won't come. Her sister still drives those forest roads on weekends, searching for something, anything. A sign that might lead her to where her sibling rests. That's the real horror of this case. Not the violence, not the betrayal, but the erasure. The way Blake Sterling tried to unmake her, tried to turn a living, breathing woman with dreams and fears and a future, into nothing, into silence, into a question mark that would haunt everyone who loved her for the rest of their lives. I've worked hundreds of cases, maybe thousands. I've seen what people do to each other when the darkness inside them wins. I've walked through crime scenes that would give you nightmares for years. But this one stays with me differently. It's the incompleteness, the unfinished symphony. The story without an ending. Blake Sterling sits in his cell tonight, probably staring at the same four walls he'll stare at until he dies. Does he think about her? Does he remember where he left her? Or has he buried that memory as deep as he buried her body, convinced himself it never happened, rewriting history inside his own mind until he's the victim of some grand conspiracy? I don't know. I'll never know. Marvin Davis claims he wants to help, wants to remember, wants to bring Scarlett home. But memory is a funny thing. Trauma rewrites it, time erodes it. Maybe he genuinely can't recall which forest, which clearing, which patch of earth became her final resting place. Or maybe that's one last lie in a case built on lies. The file goes back in the cabinet. Cold case division, conviction achieved, but recovery incomplete. I pour the last of the whiskey and watch the amber liquid disappear. Tomorrow I'll open another file, another missing person, another family waiting for answers, another ghost that haunts these halls, but tonight belongs to Scarlett Miller, to the model who vanished forever, to the woman who deserved so much more than a shallow grave in an unknown forest, to the life that was stolen and can never be returned. Outside, the rain finally begins to ease. Dawn isn't far away now. Another day in a city that never stops producing victims, and the people who fail to save them. I turn off the desk lamp and sit in the darkness, listening to the silence, where Scarlett's voice should be,